Welcome to the Infuse Compassion Podcast, hosted by me, Amy Quisenberry.
And me, Mark Carpenter.
We are on a mission to make this world a kinder place for us all by bringing healthier human connection to communities, families, and organizations of all types and sizes.
Our goal is to create stronger relationships, more inspired teams, increased trust, and improved results.
So let's get started with more ways to infuse compassion into our world. Welcome back, Compassionators, to the episode 2 of the Infuse Compassion Podcast. My name is Amy Quisenberry, and I am here with co-host Mark Carpenter, and we have an incredible guest. I'm going to turn it over to Mark to introduce our fantastic guest that I know you're all going to love. Mark?
I am honored to be able to introduce our guest, Michelle Choate. Michelle, just say hi to everybody to start us off.
Hi to everybody to start us off.
Michelle is joining us from the Boise, Idaho area. She is a facilitator, a keynote speaker, a leadership coach, an executive team coach, and an organizational development consultant with 25 years of experience in organizational culture, individual and leadership development. Michelle brings this vast level of experience to helping people master their self-leadership, effectively taking back their power and maximizing their influence in complex and volatile work environments. Emotional intelligence is the foundation of Michelle's approach. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. And this is her approach to getting into increasing self-compassion, self-awareness, and impact. She's worked with organizations ranging from healthcare and nonprofits, technology, government, higher education, to help them conceptualize solutions that build on their strengths and develop skills that reflect individual and team purpose. She facilitates this collaborative process that enables individuals and teams to lead themselves and others with increased focus, clarity, and confidence. I will also say I have known Michelle for about 15 years, and you get to add to your resume the first guest on the Infuse Compassion podcast.
Right? I just got goosebumps. So excited to be here and be joining you today. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor. Sometimes being second is the first loser, but I feel like I'm the first winner.
There you go. You are our second episode, but you are our first guest. So as we're here on this Infuse Compassion podcast, let's just jump into our core word of compassion. Right. Tell us to you, what does compassion mean to you? Why do you see it as so important in our world today?
Oh, well, those are two big questions. First, compassion is the ability to recognize that in a situation when we're confronted with another's suffering, that we have an ability to be present to it and respond to it, feel motivated to relieve that suffering. I mean, when we think about compassion with that type of a framing, to your second question, is there no better time than now for us to be looking outside of ourselves and recognizing that so many people suffer in ways that may not be visible, based on their socioeconomic status or their culture or their gender identification, and even from those that seem to be more prevalent in our society, just the deep feelings that we have growing up in complexity and trying to manage for those generational traumas that are not obvious to us. Who doesn't need compassion right now from others? And then, of course, more fully to bring it back to self. How does self-compassion come forward? And what does that mean in its expression and its application?
You made a great comment there about compassion starting with seeing people's suffering. How do we get people to increase their ability to see that? And I'm gonna kind of tag onto what you said right there at the end too. Not just see it in other people, but even notice when you're the one that's having some suffering and needs some compassion for yourself.
Well, it won't surprise you that I'll go to emotional intelligence as a means to start to engage in practice, compassionate practice for self and for other. To be compassionate for self and other means to be present to the others and selves, your own emotion, right? And so how do I know if I'm suffering if I'm not paying attention to how I'm behaving and the basis for those behaviors, which are the emotions that come from feelings that I have, which are based in fight or flight, feelings of fear, of not being good enough, of not being smart enough, of not having power, of not having control. And in this world that is so complex and volatile right now, that we live in a constant heightened state of vigilance. We just do. And interestingly, 6 Seconds, Travis Bradberry's work, did a study over the last several years of emotional intelligence internationally, and it has been consistently declining over the last 4 years. Now you kind of parallel that with, we had COVID, and then we had Black Lives Matter, and we had a Me Too movement. So we have all these major social situations. Then you add Ukraine, our political state in the United States, so incredibly divisive. Anything that we hold dear feels threatened in some way. And so just to have someone see me as a whole person, someone who can feel deeply and do so without harming others, and then be present to that and also not create harm myself, is hard. So you got to know what you're feeling so that you can respond behaviorally in a productive way.
Yeah.
So I want to go to a place that I struggle with, and I've heard and seen other people struggle with this as well. And that is this uncomfortableness that we can feel either in our own suffering or witnessing somebody else, and not knowing what to do, what to say, how to act, feeling powerless. What recommendations do you have to help somebody get past those feelings of, I don't know what to do, so I'm not going to do anything?
So that response is a fear response. It's an avoidance response. And it is recognizing that when I'm feeling a desire to withdraw, that response is meant to be a self-protection response. What am I protecting myself from if I engage in compassionate behavior? And being able to identify the withdrawal as something that's physiological, it's biological, it's not an inhumanity, it's something that we've been trained to do by our environment. And recognizing, and this is one of the joys of being human, is like, we actually are apex creatures. We don't have to behave at base behavior. We can behave at that apex behavior of common humanity and kindness, because we, for many of us, have the privilege of having homes and food and really don't live in fear. The phrase first world problem is something that we toss about a lot. Well, my car's not running well. Oh, well, first world problem. You have a car. My favorite restaurants raise their prices. First world problem. You actually have money to go to a restaurant. Oh, there's a restaurant in your community. Oh, there's electricity and water in your community. And I'm being a little bit broad brush about it, right? We take our own experience as being really the only experience. And we have a capacity through emotional intelligence to express empathy and awareness of our own and the other's emotions in such a way that demonstrates compassion, a willingness to be with, which is an empathy. I don't know if that answered your question, Amy. I get excited and then I just start talking.
No, it was really beautiful. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
We've talked a lot about, compassion generally, broadly, and in the community and with those around us. And I know you work a lot with business leaders. Mm-hmm. And so talk about the connection with emotional intelligence and actual business results. How does that tie into business? Because I grew up in a generation where it was like, no. You leave all that compassionate stuff outside the door. Don't bring yourself to work. Don't bring your personal problems in here. Separate your personal self from your work self. Remember, that was a real philosophy years ago. And it's really baloney. It's just bunk to me, because you got to bring your whole self. But talk to us a little bit about emotional intelligence and the impact on having higher emotional intelligence in the workplace.
Well, I mean, if you wanted to dig into any research around leadership and effective leadership, you're going to hear the phrase emotional intelligence again and again. The ability to know what you're thinking and feeling and be able to understand when others are feeling and use effective behaviors to understand with greater depth how their feelings and your feelings impact decision-making, stress management, and business results.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I loved that example that you just shared.
Yeah, that was really strong, incredible visual. One of the things that you said that really struck me was the harm, the impact. You mentioned short-term, long-term, right? And really understanding that. What's one of the things that you've done in your coaching or that you've seen other people do to help bring awareness to how these leaders are showing up? We don't have the ability to coach everybody. So what's a self tool that we could just to help people, I'm going to say, wake up.
The self tool to wake up. The thing that I think about immediately has to do with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So the first tool is to, like, if you're getting feedback from people that your performance is lagging or your team's performance is lagging, or there are breaks in communication from your department, or things are not working effectively and your team isn't talking about them, that's a form of feedback. People not talking is feedback because it says they don't feel safe to. So looking externally, what is happening around me that says I need to attend to, pay attention to, how I'm behaving, what am I putting out there, and the impacts of my behavioral choice on others. That's influence, right? The intrinsic part of that is, and just this morning was coaching someone through this. They said, how do I not backslide? Because I've worked so hard on developing the skill set, and I'm afraid once the coaching ends, how do I maintain it? Well, this is where it starts and ends. Pay attention to the emotions that you have. When you have strong emotions, particularly negative emotions, they tell you that you're feeling something. Emotions are data. That's a bottom line. If you recognize that our emotions are data, they tell you to pay attention to what's happening around you that cause you to feel strong negative feelings. Emotions like fear, anxiety, disgust, irritation, resentment. Even if you don't intend to, you're going to act these things out. And so you have to be able to get ahead of these things so that when you behave, you're behaving in alignment with a higher level motivation, not the fight or flight or survival instinct that we often find ourselves in. The other thing is you'll start to notice like tendencies towards burnout, feeling less engaged in your work, feeling more exhausted in your work, finding less joy in other parts of your work, having a shorter fuse, if you will, outside of your work because you've left it all at work. Those are also really important signs. So the first thing is self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, I can talk about any tool on the planet. Self-awareness is the first step in improving your capacity to influence others through emotional intelligence and to start to demonstrate self-compassion. What is it that I'm thinking and feeling right now? And can I give myself the same gift I would give someone else who is feeling the same way I am right now? Mm-hmm. Being able to confront my own suffering and its sources with a deep awareness that I am just a human. I am not perfect, and finding ways to alleviate, not exacerbate those feelings of distress or helplessness or hopelessness.
So I want to put a spotlight on something that I heard you say. I loved everything you said, but I want to come back to one line that I just...
You do it. I'm in. Let's do this.
Emotions are data.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I've never heard this before. And like, I'm a data person. I love data. And I guarantee when people hear this podcast, they're going to look at emotions. They're going to look at compassion, self-compassion completely differently. Self-awareness, awareness of others, totally different, just because of this one thing of emotions are data. Thank you. Like lots of gems you dropped already, but this one right here, I'm just going to put it in my pocket and carry it with me forever. So thank you.
So much power because it gives us objectivity over something that we feel is subjective. Emotions are simply something that we can observe and explore. Yeah. And the basis for those is the exploration.
Yeah.
So tidy, right? And it takes people who, and I'm myself one, I am kind of a born skeptic. It helps me be able to create context for people when they realize that their emotion is not something to be judged. It simply is. It's just simply is. It's a thing. Honor it.
And there's a source for it. It's not just this bubbles up uncalled for or just on its own, that the emotion
Out of
creeps
context,
into
right?
you. It's not like that Inside Out movie, animated movie where the little
Yeah.
things live inside of you.
Well,
It's coming from our thoughts and that are driven by the environment that are around us. And so if we can
yeah.
make that connection back to those, to your point, we have more power over our emotions because
Right?
we recognize them for what they are, and then they stop controlling us, we start controlling them.
Imagine a world where we all do this,
Yeah.
where the people closest and dearest to us, where our leaders do this, where our teams do this, where our parents do this, can you imagine a world?
Yeah.
So I just pictured, like, if you look at an executive, right? Department leader, executive, manager, what do? They use data to build strategies, key intel.
Right.
We are the CEO of our own body, our own life.
Whoa.
And imagine if we were to take that intel with that awareness, without judgment, but in an observational state, and use it to forecast, to plan, to course correct, to whatever. Wow. Now this is empowerment. This is power. This is transformational. I have goosebumps everywhere, Michelle.
Welcome to emotional intelligence coaching. That's exactly what I do. I start with an EQ 360. So it's self and other assessment. And all I do is put the data in front of them and say, look at how amazing you are. What a resilient, flexible, powerful human being. And look at your strengths and let's use those.
Yeah.
And let's not worry about if you have to get good or bad at anything. Just be your best self. And that's the basis for it. And so the emotional self-awareness, then we can take it into the workplace and people can actually assess, okay, I'm feeling this way. How are people receiving me? Oh, now I'm starting to see the impact of my behavior, see the impact of my emotions, and make different choices about what I'm going to be motivated by and prioritize. Move away from the self-succoring, the feelings that make us feel better about how we behave, which when we behave poorly, we end up turning into self-blame and self-shame and then avoiding. So there's this growth cycle that goes the opposite way. I mean, what if every day you knew you met every challenge with your best self, that you're freed from having to be this, pariah on the hill, but truly just standing in the trenches with people, being your best self all day, every day, and you know what that looks and feels like. It's beautiful stuff. Yeah, EQ is amazing.
And so, Michelle, you've talked about getting away from that judgmental self and having some more self-compassion is how I'm interpreting what you're saying. So how do we keep, two questions. How do you get people to get out of that self-judgment mode? So there's step one. And then how do you keep it from swinging too far to where it gets from self-compassion to self-indulgence?
Yeah, and that's a really interesting spectrum to contemplate. First is to know that self-compassion has actually been defined formally and measured. So again, let's go to data. There's a self-compassion assessment out there put out by Dr. Krista Neff. She's been studying self-compassion for 20 years. And it helps you identify the qualities of self-compassion that you have and demonstrate effectively, and their shadows where you may also be demonstrating those and the impact of those on the better qualities of self-compassion. So when we're self-compassionate, we're mindful, like we are present to ourselves and our needs. We're kind to ourselves, which means when I'm hungry, I eat. If I have used the restroom, I go to the bathroom. When I drop something, I don't call myself a name. When I make a mistake, I don't self-flagellate for 3 days. When I harm someone, I apologize instead of ruminating and then blaming them, right? And then common humanity. And this is the third component of self-compassion. And that's recognizing that we're all walking through this journey with the same fears, anxieties, hopes, dreams, wants, AKA like you are me, I am you. And if I can see myself as human and not have unreasonable expectations for me, the quality of my performance, and judge myself more harshly, then I'm demonstrating self-compassion. The flip side of those feelings are over-identification. Like I would call this like catastrophic thinking. oh my gosh, I dropped a glass. There's glass everywhere. Someone's going to break their foot. I'm such an idiot, right? So now I've taken this ladder of attribution and made myself not just for a moment, clumsy behavior, but like I'm a bad person because of it. Right. So that's the opposite of self-compassion. Judging yourself and then using that self-abusive language, which is some of that is us, but a lot of it's learned. Because as we deepen our understanding of emotional intelligence, we recognize that a lot of those voices that we speak to ourselves with are the voices of others, where people have said things to us, or we've attributed their meaning of their behaviors to us. So eliminating self-judgment. And then finally, this sense of isolation, like I'm the only one that feels this way. Interestingly, by demonstrating self-compassion, you actually grow more compassionate for others. It increases your resilience. It increases your physical and emotional health. It decreases abuse of drugs, alcohol, and other addictive behaviors. Self-compassion has so much power, and we think it's indulgent. It's only indulgent when we use it instead of as a means to forgive things that we actually could do different or better. So consider it instead not being like self-forgiveness over actions or choices that we could have actually done better or different, but self-awareness and then self-goodwill. And I know you're not a bad person, and to think of yourself in any other way would be self-harm. You want to take that, think about it this way. Your best friend has just had a car accident, and they've had several car accidents. None of them are harmful to others. However, their husband's getting a little tired of the car accidents, right? Are you going to say, bruh, no problem? Like, this is like the third time this month, and, darn it, things get in the way, that stupid fire hydrant. Or are you going to go, man, what's going on with you? Something's happening. You're not paying attention behind the wheel. And I want to be with you as we talk about this. But this is something we need to explore. And I still love you. That's just like a simple way to think about not getting self-indulgent. Can it look like pedicures? Heck yeah. Can it be massages? Could it be your favorite dessert? Why not? As long as it's not used to self-soothe.
Yeah. And I love that distinction. I love the distinction that you're making there. As long as it's not used as an excuse for my behavior. Because what I'm hearing from you is there's self-compassion here is the sweet spot in the middle. And we've got self-indulgence on the other side that really has kind of the same symptoms as the lack of compassion on the other side.
Isn't that fascinating, Mark? You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. The same symptoms. There's avoidance, there's lack of self-responsibility, and there's limiting of choice and power, which, from the work that I do is really the focus. I want people to feel completely in control of themselves. They have choices over their behaviors, they have choices over their thoughts, and they have choices over their feelings. And the concomitant results of that is the capacity for them to influence. And if they're not caring for self through good, compassionate behavior, they cannot influence effectively others.
Yeah. And I love that perspective too, that we can't be compassionate to other people unless we have some compassion for ourselves.
Right. Yeah.
Amy and I knew when we started this podcast that we would have this problem. We could go on all day with you. And I think we're at the point where we've given people a lot to absorb and a lot to take in. So what I'd like to wrap up with, we call our community in Infuse Compassion our compassionators, those who have opted in to building compassion, infusing compassion.
I love it.
So
hi, compassionators.
Yeah, and Michelle's a compassionator with us. She's in on this.
I am.
Here's what I'd like to wrap with. What is one action? What's one step our compassionators can take this week to start infusing compassion into their lives?
This is going to sound like a very pat answer, but it's something I've been exploring lately with clients. And I'm not going to let you walk away with the easy one on this. What are you grateful for you for? And I don't want it to be like, I filed my fingernails. Phew. Like, I don't want you just to make a list, but I want you to think about at least one or two things every day that as you look at the wholeness of your day and your capacity to impact others, that you truly recognize that you did. And I want you to sit with that feeling of gratitude for self. I'm grateful. And even just talking about it, I can feel my blood pressure lowering. I am grateful that I sat with my dog and petted him. It lowered my blood pressure. It lowered his blood pressure. I'm grateful that I get to talk to lovely people like you every single day and be part of these conversations. Not because I feel like I want to be heard, but I just get the joy of my bucket being filled by this stuff. And to sit with the feeling of gratitude is a means of having self-compassion, because we don't give ourselves those joys very often. And it's a really powerful tool.
Well, I'm grateful that we invited Michelle to be our guest on Infuse Compassion. Amy, additional kind of last comments here, and then I want to throw one more question back to Michelle.
For sure.
Yes, Michelle, I made the decision on this podcast that I'm going to hire you as a coach. And I'm guessing there's other people that want to know how to connect with you, contact you. Can you share how we can get a hold of you?
Yep. The quick and easiest way is my website, www.michellechoate.com. MICHELLECHOATE, michellechoate.com. And, if you haven't visited Idaho, it's one of the most stunning regions in the country. And this summer, coming up in August, we will be holding our first Advancing Self-Compassion Women's 2-day retreat. And we're going to go into the mountains and we're going to connect with all that Idaho has to offer in terms of natural beauty, but also do some really deep connections with that part of ourselves that doesn't demonstrate that kindness. And we're going to help each other find ways to demonstrate self-compassion, not just as a passing practice, but as a means to work through everyday life activities, relationships. It's going to be really powerful. If you're interested, we're going to start the launch of it January. So coming up in the next month or two, do think about, if you're interested, getting on the list right away. Send something to the connect with me on the website. Because once it fills, and it's going to be pretty small. But I'm very excited about the lineup. It's going to be really amazing.
That sounds incredible. I can see myself there. You said August. Do you know which weekend?
We're actually, so interesting you asked. We're targeting the weekend of August 22nd, 23rd, 24th. And if it fills up, we'll probably add another weekend in September.
Okay.
So we only have 12 slots available. It's at a location in a little area called Idaho City, natural hot springs, hiking, night sky. It's everything you'd want to be able to come back into yourself and honor yourself. I know, I've got goosebumps right now. I'm so excited to share it with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Amy actually took the question I was going to ask you, which was, how can we connect with you? So that actually got us to the right where we wanted to be. I just want to end by thanking you again, Michelle, for being with us, and thanking you for the work that you're bringing into the world and sharing it with our compassionators here. And I hope that all of you will take the opportunity to learn more about Michelle, learn more from Michelle. And thanks for joining us on this episode of Infuse Compassion. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time. Don't forget to always infuse compassion. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Infuse Compassion Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please share a review and like the podcast so other compassionators can join us. Until next time, let's all do something each day to infuse compassion into the world. For more information on our guests, see the show notes. For more information on Mark and Amy, go to infusecompassion.com.